The reading is from Mark chapter 10, starting at verse 32. They were on their way up to Jerusalem with Jesus leading the way, and the disciples were astonished, while those who followed were afraid. Again, he took the 12 aside and told them what was going to happen to him. "We are going up to Jerusalem," he said, "and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him and spit on him, flog him and kill him. 3 days later, he will rise." Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. "Teacher," they said, "we want you to do for us whatever we ask." "What do you want me to do for you?" he asked. They replied, "Let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory." "You don't know what you are asking," Jesus said. "Can you drink the cup I drink, or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with?" "We can," they answered. Jesus said to them, "You will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with, but to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared." When the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many."
I want to share with you this morning about a new topic of talks that begin today on Christian leadership. And I want to say something from the very beginning. When you hear the word leadership, you may think it's all about standing up at the front or just for a few people. Actually, I want to dispel that and say leadership is about everybody, all of you sitting here and friends online. As you influence someone, and we all influence someone in one way or another, believe it or not, you are an influencer. It's not just for people out there on social media. You influence in one way or another just by the very actions and attitudes and conversations you have on a daily basis. We are all influencers. Therefore, we may all be leaders in one way or another if we understand leadership by way of influence. But there are two mini-series that we have, and there's one before Easter and one after Easter. This one is formed of 3 topics on servant leadership. And we're going to today just explore a little bit of the reading that Anne read to us about Jesus and his understanding of servant leadership and his invitation to all of us. And then next Sunday, it's Mothering Sunday, and we're going to look at John 13 as we approach Easter and explore servant leadership in John's Gospel. And then on the 6th of April, Nick is going to speak to us from Philippians 2 about a way of servant leadership. And it's a wonderful hymn in Philippians. And then there's Palm Sunday, which is an all-age service. And then we have a baptism service on Easter Day, on the 20th of April. And then after Easter, have you got this? Are you with me already? Yeah? After Easter, there's part 2 of these talks, which is on relational leadership. Leadership can often be seen as transactional, task-focused. Well, that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is relationship. What does it mean to be in relationship and lead out of a place of personhood before task? And we're going to look at one of the shortest books in Scripture, Philemon. And there's only one chapter, and we're going to look at verses 1 to 7, and then 8 to 16, and 17 to 25, and that's happening after Easter. Aren't you all really excited? Woohoo! 1. But I just wanted to let you know where we're going and where we're headed over the next few weeks. And if you are part of a life group in this church, that's people that gather in smaller groups throughout the week, and they hopefully study scripture and pray together and meet together in friendship groups. There are some Bible study notes that go with each of these talks, and you can pick up the notes at the edge as the exits this morning, or it comes out by way of email to those who are on the email list. I met Gareth Southgate. Yeah, this is a younger version of me and a younger version of Gareth Southgate. And we were at Edgbaston Cricket Ground and the Eric Hollis stand. If anyone knows anything about cricket, my wife thinks cricket, Hannah, I'm sorry, you think cricket is the most boring, dull thing in the world ever. That's 28 years of marriage, by the way, just there. Whereas I love cricket, and I love going to Edgbaston, and the Eric Hollis stand is the stand which gets a little bit rowdy, especially on a Saturday. And Gareth Southgate was right there. Of course it's not Gareth Southgate, but the lookalike. And it was hilarious. The whole stand wanted to get a selfie with Gareth. I mean, who wouldn't want to? And there were all sorts of people dressed up in all sorts of ways, and I was a bit dull. But amongst the barmy army, the English fans at the cricket, Gareth Southgate was a popular English cricket fan. And this week, Gareth Southgate, the real Gareth Southgate, gave a lecture, the Richard Dimbleby lecture, and he reflected on his personal journey as a leader. Some people may have got this on their phones as something that has cropped up. There's lots of news that crops up this way and the other, but Gareth Southgate, the former England football manager, who frequents cricket games every now and again, he gave this lecture about his leadership. But the one word, as I listened to that lecture, 54 minutes, really good stuff, was void. A total and utter void. And he said, young men are suffering, feeling isolated, grappling with their place in society as mentorship declines. Young men end up withdrawing, reluctant to talk or to express their emotions. They fall into unhealthy alternatives. There is a void in society tricking young men to think that success is by way of dominating or manipulating or tricking other people with falsehood. There is this view of falsehood that success in society is measured by money or dominance, never showing emotion, and that the world, with a focus on women, are against them. And what Gareth Southgate was doing was saying that for young men particularly, he was focusing on young men, there is this lack of role model, this void that is being filled with all that is not healthy. Young people are being influenced by the wrong people. He was saying that young people today need to be influenced by good. He was calling for a better way to live, where there were actions that were displayed by good, honourable role models of how best to conduct one's life in society. And that's part of the reason why this series of talks before Easter and after Easter, I think, is so crucial. Because as Gareth Southgate was giving this 54-minute lecture, and I heard the word void, 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 I was thinking, and who fills the void but the greatest servant leader the world has ever known? Jesus Christ. Don't look to me for perfection. Don't look to other people in this church for perfection. In fact, as someone said, I'm reading a book at the moment about leadership, and there's so many books about leadership, we could get our head in spaghetti about it all, but they said it's really good to follow a leader with a limp. Basically, don't have the view that there's a perfect leader out there. But when we look to the person of Jesus Christ, we see the perfect servant leader who fills the void that is so prevalent in society. I've been a Christian leader for 25 years. I've experienced leadership in churches in London and in Dallas, Texas, Tirana, Albania, and BMS World Mission, both here in Birmingham, and then going from BMS into a local church in Bourneville, and now here among you. And leadership in church and in charities and in businesses can be seen from different angles with different styles and different approaches and different theories on leadership. But there's another word about leadership, not the word void. In the world today, some would say that leadership is plummeting. Across the globe, we are experiencing circumstances which are increasingly polarized and turbulent. At the same time, we face uncertainty in everything from the economy and inflation to technology and the future of work. I mean, the amount of times that AI is cropping up, and some people see it as the hope for the world, and other people see it as the end of the world. We're living in a polarized age, and I've not even mentioned war and rumors of war and tensions within nations and the leadership struggles that are on our screens on a daily basis that put our head in our hands at times. Hearing from one source, which I should have noted, I'll try and note it and send it out there, but it said that 61% of people globally believe business leaders purposely try to mislead by saying things they know are false or exaggerated. 61%. 63% believe that the same about government leaders, and 64% say the same about journalists and the media. And I was talking to someone this week about leadership, and they said to me, what I've done with a couple of people I know is I've shown them my bookshelves. And on my bookshelves are all sorts of books about theology and Christian leadership and spirituality and Old Testament and New Testament and church planting techniques. I've got this whole bookshelves of books. But on there are authors, leaders, who have mucked up, committed adultery, or stolen money from the church, or spoken about malehood in such a way that women are put down. The authors are there on Christian leadership. So it's not just the 61%, the 63%, the 64%. There is also Christian leadership within the church. Let's not assume that we are immune to this. Trust in leadership is plummeting. Gareth Southgate would say there's a void in leadership. So where do we take all this? What makes Christian leadership distinctively Christian? Well, I've read a few commentaries on this passage, but N.T. Wright's Everyone for Mark talks about answering that question in relation to the cross. Perhaps you think of going to church and singing well-known hymns, "When I Survey the Wondrous Cross," when you think about the cross. Perhaps you think of a picture or statue or look above my head and reminding you of the sorrow and suffering of Jesus that brings hope into your own sorrow and suffering. Perhaps that's what you think about with the cross. Perhaps you think about the brutality that could have dreamed up a way of killing people and of the similar brutalities that still deface God's world today. Perhaps you have an image of the cross in mind, the crowds at the foot of the cross and mocking Jesus and others at the foot of the cross in tears. And perhaps you have an imagination of yourself standing there with them watching Jesus die. In Mark's Gospel, at the beginning of the passage that was read to us by Anne, we have in those verse 32 to 34 this description of the cross as Jesus was condemned. None of us are condemned because Jesus alone is condemned. Jesus is handed over, Jesus is mocked, Jesus is flogged, Jesus is spat on. I've been spat on once on a football pitch, age 17. Thinking I was the best left back in the world. But their right winger spat on me. Flogged. Killed. Jesus experienced all this. And if you want to know more gory detail, look at Isaiah 53. And at the heart of the obedience of Christ journeying towards the cross, and Mark tells us this is the third time that Jesus was talking to his followers about this. Jesus knew his leadership was first and foremost not too dissimilar to a slave. Doulos is the Greek word for slave. Diakonos is the Greek word for servant, and the combination of doulos and diakonos is the very thing that Jesus did on the cross. Diakonos is where we get from the Greek word, we get deacon. If you want to know, when we talk about deacons in the church, it's diakonos, which means servant. 30 times in the New Testament that word is said, and if you're still struggling to work out what a deacon does, just go to a restaurant on the Stratford Road and be really nice to your waiter. Because in Acts, it talks about waiting on tables as an experience or a connection of servanthood. Those that wait in Kairos on your tables, be super nice to them because they're acting as a deacon. They're acting as a servant. Jesus on the cross was the servant king, the servant leader who served the void of the world, the falsehood of the world by turning it upside down and saying, in me, there is fulfillment. There is no void. In me, there are other leaders that fail. I am perfect, says Jesus. And so we look to Jesus, the servant leader. James and John could not understand this. They were still trying to be on his left and on his right. And Jesus said, you do not know what you're asking. Can you drink the cup of suffering? And the NIV, I really struggle sometimes with the NIV because it downplays, whereas the NLT version, the New Living Translation, actually describes it as the cup of suffering. You can't drink this cup of suffering, and you don't know the baptism of which I am going to display on the cross, dying in order to rise again. Only I can journey towards the cross. Well, we want to stand at your right and your left, say James and John. We want to be where you are. We want to be a leader like you without a limp. And Jesus says, you're not going to go there. I think he was referring to the two criminals either side of him. The cross alone was for the servant king. I did a sermon series 2 years ago that you might well have forgotten, but it was about the way of Jesus. And it was about Jesus identifying with us and him in the wilderness experience and full of tears and joy and the empty grave and Jesus changing his lives. Do you believe that Jesus changes lives? Do you believe he serves as the servant king? Serving others prepares you to lead others. James and John didn't really quite understand this. They were asking to be raised up just beside Jesus. And in so doing, they were asking for the other 10 disciples to be put down. It was an example of unhealthy leadership, a competitive, task-orientated style of leadership. And Jesus was saying, there's another way to lead. I alone go to the cross, but I call you also to pick up your cross and to follow me. Not as saviors of the world, not to have a messianic complex. Jesus is unique and distinct in all that he did and accomplished in the cross. But he asks us to take up our cross and follow him, that we would pattern our lives on Jesus and to serve both as slaves and as servants to the king's purpose, which is to fill the void of the world with a love and justice that the world has never seen. The 10 became indignant. It's a kind of old-fashioned term, perhaps. They were annoyed, frustrated, angry, maybe even a bit salty. There was the jostling for conflict and power and control among the disciples because they didn't understand what it meant to follow the servant leader. But Jesus, in giving the example and the challenge and the invitation to servanthood, is basically saying, this following of me will be costly. Pick up your cross daily and follow me. To be a follower of the servant king is not glamorous. It's not trendy. And it's certainly not self-seeking or self-serving. To follow the servant leader, the servant king, and for us too to be people who say yes to Jesus and follow him means that it involves self-emptying. Dying to self to find a new way to live. It demands time and energy, dedication, commitment, and vision. The cost of leading and serving is the cost of discipleship. When I survey the wondrous cross, demands a half-hearted attitude? No. Demands a nonchalant spirituality? No. Demands my life, my soul, my all. Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to thee. If you want to follow Jesus, the servant king, you too daily will take up your cross to follow him. Do we sing songs of praise, of costliness? Servant leadership creates scars. Jesus rose from the dead but had scars of servant leadership. We too may have scars as we follow Jesus, the servant king. But it is also life-giving. To be a servant leader is costly, does have scars with it, but it's life-giving and life-affirming. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and the gospel will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul? Is anything worth more than the soul? What I'm really talking about today, if you want to think of anything other than servant leadership, is this. It's about strengthening your soul. Do you want to strengthen your soul? I don't even know where the soul is, some of you may say. It's too mysterious for me to understand. We understand our head, we may understand our heart and maybe even our gut, but the soul. When you say yes to Jesus, you're saying yes to strengthening your soul as a servant leader. Strengthen your soul this morning. It may cost you. You may have scars along the journey. But taking up your cross to follow the servant leader is to say, I will pick up the towel and not the sword. More of that next week. Amen.